Why did Johnny Carson spend his last years completely alone? He was America's king of late-night TV, loved by millions. In 1992, 50 million people watched his final episode. But after that last show, he just disappeared. No interviews, no comebacks, and almost no public life at all. So why did the most famous man on TV vanish into total isolation? That's the mystery we're about to uncover. When Johnny died on January 23, 2005, there was no public memorial service. From the 1980s until his death in 2005, Johnny Carson lived in his Malibu home. He saw fewer than 20 people per year outside his immediate family. You might wonder how this was possible considering Johnny was the host of NBC's The Tonight Show from 1962 to 1992. That's 30 years of constantly being in the public eye. How could he make sure that he limited his interactions with people, especially when during that period, Johnny interviewed over 7,000 guests and had done about 4,531 episodes? No wonder Johnny Carson became the most famous face on television in that period. He was described as being effortlessly charming and funny. But not many people knew this. That wasn't the real Johnny. Or was it? His producer, Peter Lee, noticed something disturbing. He realized Johnny was wearing a mask of being a charming extrovert. Peter saw Johnny switch from being an energetic, charming man to dropping monotonous sentences while missing his couch at home. To Johnny, being a TV presenter was just a job he had to do. And there was a reason for this, which we'll soon tell you. So, anytime the cameras stopped rolling, Johnny was already looking for ways to avoid people and get out of the studio. Small talk. He didn't even want to talk to any of the crew members or even his colleagues. Johnny would rather be alone doing crossword puzzles than do that. What about talking to fans? That was a long shot. Johnny was so determined to avoid people that he instructed NBC to make his own private exit for him. He would return each night, but the routine stayed the same. There were times that his routine got threatened, like when he got invitations to industry events. Johnny treated those events as if they were burdens. He avoided them when he could, and when he couldn't he reluctantly went. In a year, Johnny would only attend around 12 industry events while his competitor Merv Griffin attended around 45 or more each year. Johnny had an excuse for not going to those Hollywood events. He would claim parties are for extroverts and preferred to go home to talk to his dog, not his wife. What a man! Could this be the reason why Johnny had 4 marriages? Was he ignoring the emotional needs of the women he married before he disappeared from the public and after? His routine was simple. He would play tennis alone or read astronomy magazine in solitude. In the afternoon, he would have brief phone calls to Jay Leno for joke swapping. Their interaction was controlled and professional. Even when he got visitors like director Howard Smith, they would have a small chat before Johnny asked them to stay quiet and watch the stars. Smith said Johnny was content. But was that contentment, or was Johnny's past still haunting him even during the last days of his life? What is Johnny's past? You'll see what we mean soon. In the evenings, Johnny always ate at home, but it wasn't as if he didn't get invitations for dinner outside his home. His 4th wife, Alexis Mass, said they had quiet dinners, no guests and less family. She claimed Johnny thrived in that silence. Did he really, or was he being selfish? Rather than talk to her, Johnny would prefer to read, play tennis alone, or just watch the ocean. Johnny was too focused on himself and not the needs of his wife and those around him. But Johnny also was a charitable man. He privately and without fanfare wrote out millions of dollars in checks to charitable causes to strangers. However, how could this same man hardly give his wife attention? But it wasn't just the women he married, he did this too. As you'll come to see, it isn't really surprising that Johnny turned out this way. When he was young, he wasn't like other kids. While neighborhood children played baseball and chased each other through Iowa cornfields, he stayed inside reading comics or perfecting card tricks from a mail-order magic kit he'd begged for. At age 14, he usually experienced stomach-knotting dread before social interactions. It was so bad that when guests came to visit, he would crouch behind his family's upright piano. Sometimes he would hide in the shadows and shuffle playing cards, all to avoid guests. He had to, because if he got too noticed and wasn't perfect, he could get in trouble. His mother, Ruth, demanded perfection from him and his siblings. However, she didn't think Johnny would be capable of anything close to perfection. Imagine letting a child feel like they can't be good enough. She even thought as a boy Johnny would always be filthy and she didn't like dirt. Imagine that. Ruth was ruthless. She didn't act like a mother but like a cranky captain of a warship. Affection, that was a currency in her household, and she was stingy with it. Compliments and warmth had to be earned. Even when he became successful as a late-night TV host, there were reports that she ridiculed him. Could these reports be true? Did she hate her own son? When Johnny got his cards, he practiced his entertainment skills on family members with card tricks. He would follow them around and ask them to pick a card. He then decided to perform in front of people despite being shy. His mother supported him and made him a cake for his first performance in front of the local Kiwanis club. Eventually, he debuted as the Great Carsoni at age 14 and was paid $3 a show. Johnny realized something. The audience loved him. The warmth he felt was different from the pressure he felt from his mother. When his mother died in October 1985 at 84 years, he didn't mourn her. Instead, what he told his friends was the Wicked Witch is dead. Johnny refused to attend the funeral. But however, what happened next shattered what he thought about his mom. In her home, Johnny made a discovery. It turned out that inside her home, she kept a large box filled with clippings from his entire career. Every article, every review, every mention. The woman who never showed him affection had been his biggest fan all along, collecting evidence of his success in secret. Johnny took that box and kept it in his bedroom closet for the rest of his life. Did he regret not attending his mom's funeral? Could he have forgiven her for his childhood at that moment? Living in that kind of dysfunctional environment destroyed Johnny's perception of people. He would rather avoid them than make a mess of interaction and get scolded. But deep inside, Johnny wanted to be loved. He enjoyed the attention he got from doing card tricks for people. He decided he wanted to be a magician. Some reports claim Mother nastily discouraged him. These reports may not be true because she secretly kept the large box we talked about before that contained clippings of articles about his progress. Or did she discourage him first and have a change of mind later? Or maybe she didn't want him to be a magician and was fine with everything else. While he was in the United States Navy, he discovered something about himself. He could actually do it. In the Navy, Johnny showed the ability to engage and win during physical combat. He was an amateur boxer in the Navy, and out of his 16 fights, he only lost one. So, U.S. Secretary of the Navy James V. Forrestal asked him if he wanted to remain in the Navy, but Johnny said no and revealed he wanted to be a magician instead. Forrestal must have been stunned. So, he asked that Johnny perform a trick for him. But Johnny didn't just wish to become a magician. He had the skills for it. Johnny was able to amuse and entertain Forrestal. From that experience, Johnny realized that if he could entertain and amuse someone as cranky and sophisticated as Forrestal, he could entertain anyone. Then he made a decision. He wasn't going to be a magician anymore. He was going to be a comedy writer. To achieve this, when he attended the University of Nebraska in 1946, he majored in journalism. Writing comedy would allow him to entertain without really interacting with people. However, some months into his program, Johnny switched courses to speech and drama. Why the change of heart? Johnny didn't want to write comedy anymore. He decided he was going to be a radio performer instead. There was a reason for this, too. Johnny had begun to perform magic tricks for money. He made about $25 per show, and he wanted a career that would give him a feeling close to that. Being a radio performer seemed like the best choice. By 1949, he was done with college, but he wouldn't become a radio performer. However, his college training prepared him for what he would eventually be, a TV host. And after failing and not giving up, Johnny finally got his show on NBC in 1962. Why would a shy and introverted person choose to be a late-night TV host? Remember his weird perception of love since he got the love and warmth he wished he got in his childhood from audiences. Johnny was hooked. But there was a problem. He was unable or unwilling to try getting that love from the women he married. He didn't even look for it from his 3 sons by his first marriage. Just like his mother did to him, Johnny treated his sons with a cool, distant indifference. How sad. Johnny became the very thing he resented. However, it wasn't that he didn't care about them. They are even among the reasons Johnny doesn't want to be in the public. Stick around and see what we mean. There was another reason Johnny chose to be a TV host. The format of The Tonight Show allowed Johnny to have the illusion of interaction. The show became his therapy, a way to escape the trauma of his childhood. The talk show was in a controlled environment. The interactions were scripted and the outcomes were predictable. Johnny simply wanted to eat his cake and have it to be with people while not really being with them. However, despite this, Johnny planned to leave everything behind when the time was right. The show stopped being therapy as his fame increased, and that fame interfered with the quietness off camera that Johnny wanted. That fame even cost him everything. And you'll soon see on the set of his show. He didn't mind the cameras, but off it he wanted absolute privacy, which fans wouldn't give him. However, it seemed like everything he did was because of his childhood, which served as the blueprint for everything that followed in his adult life. That childhood really wasn't one he would like to remember. Also, it wasn't the only reason Johnny lived his final years in isolation. Johnny was sick, but this part of him was something he wanted to keep from the world. In September 2002, 2 years before his death, Johnny's representative kept on insisting he was in good health. Even Johnny himself told CBS News that he was fine when tabloids kept saying he wasn't. But Johnny wasn't fine, and he was the one that brought his illness on himself. Let us explain. While it wasn't clear when Johnny began to smoke, one thing was clear. Johnny loved to smoke. Or did he? In the 1960s, Johnny smoked everywhere, even on live television. At the time, it was allowed, and Johnny took full advantage of it, or maybe abused it. Johnny was a chain smoker, and NBC archives revealed the shocking figures. Johnny likely smoked 40 to 60 cigarettes every single day. That's 3 full packs during high-stress tapings. Between monologues and commercial breaks, Johnny's lungs were getting destroyed in real time while millions of Americans watched him make it look cool. But here's what they didn't see. Johnny's chesty coughs weren't going away. Doctors warned him about the cough, but Johnny didn't stop smoking. It wasn't that he didn't want to. He couldn't. He was addicted and was too ashamed to admit it. He even privately told loved ones that the cigarettes were killing him. Yet, he continued puffing on cigarettes all day when he had the chance. With each cigarette he smoked, he felt guilty. And he admitted in the late 1970s that he should have gotten help. If he did, maybe he would still be alive now. Johnny's lungs began to have holes and became unable to absorb oxygen the way they're supposed to. Still, he kept smoking and kept performing while his body screamed for mercy. Why would someone so intelligent ignore such obvious danger? Johnny's lung capacity continued to reduce, and at some point it was 60%. Working became more difficult for him. Crowded rooms became suffocating for him, and the king of wit and fast responses began to gasp for breath after being in a crowd. But it wasn't just crowded rooms that gave him problems. Stairs became his enemies and elevators felt suffocating. Something was deeply wrong. And then in 1991, the danger could no longer be ignored. Johnny's cough and that constant shortness of breath wasn't normal. In 1991, doctors diagnosed him with emphysema. Could this diagnosis be why Johnny chose to retire from NBC in 1992? People felt that his retirement was shocking and that Johnny still had much to give. But did he? Now it made perfect sense. Johnny was escaping before his body gave out on national television. Before America watched him gasp for air between punchlines, the emphysema forced him to choose between retirement with dignity or public humiliation by suffocation. Johnny hated to be seen gasping for breath. It could be part of the reason he even avoided those Hollywood parties. He didn't want to be in a crowd and let them see him react violently. So, retirement sounded great. Unfortunately, it was too late. By 1993, walking 100 yards triggered shortness of breath so severe he'd have to stop and recover. His lung capacity continued to reduce, and it reached around 35 to 40% by 2004. Most people at that level require supplemental oxygen just to sit upright. But Johnny, reports came that he refused supplemental oxygen. Some even said he kept on smoking. What was Johnny thinking? He even had a terrible incident that should have inspired him to stop smoking in 1995, but Johnny continued, likely because of his addiction and because he didn't like to be seen as weak. Could this be another traumatic response to the kind of childhood he had? So, despite his failing health, Johnny kept up appearances that he was fine. But between 1999 and 2002, he was hospitalized for heart attacks and pneumonia complications, and it got worse. By 2004, Johnny required 24/7 oxygen therapy. That means constant tubes in his nose, constant awareness of his mortality, constant limitation on every movement, every activity, every moment. Johnny, who kept on saying he wasn't sick, admitted that he was on borrowed time. And on January 23, 2005, that time was up. He died at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles of respiratory failure arising from emphysema. The smoking he loved to hate finally killed him. However, it could be that Johnny was no longer interested in living long before then and just wanted the disease to kill him. Maybe this was why he didn't use oxygen when it could have benefited him. Johnny had suffered so many losses in his life. Those losses may have made living seem like a chore to him rather than something he would enjoy. When Johnny married his college sweetheart, Joan Walcott, in 1949, life couldn't be better. They had 3 sons together, Christopher, Rick, and Corey. And then fame arrived. But fame came with something else. Destruction. After 14 years, the marriage collapsed. The reason, Johnny confessed, he cheated on his wife and was obsessed with his work. But here's the sadder part. The divorce didn't just end a marriage. It created a wide gap between Johnny and his sons. A gap Johnny didn't fix. Because just as his first marriage ended, Johnny married Joanne Copeland, a stunning model. He didn't try to learn from the mistakes he made in his first marriage. Maybe if he had, his marriage to Joanne wouldn't have ended after 9 years. Joanne accused Johnny of emotional neglect and workaholism. Their divorce was public and it cost him $500,000. It was a hefty fee, but wait till you see what his next marriage cost him. The $500,000 was a lot, but the emotional toll it took on the journey was much more. However, the emotional cost of his next marriage was much worse. Johnny married Joanna Holland in 1972 and their marriage lasted around 13 years. It was a miracle that the marriage lasted that long. Those 13 years weren't peaceful. Joanne was a socialite whose high society lifestyle clashed so violently with Johnny, preferring to stay indoors. When their marriage ended, it nearly bankrupted Johnny both financially and emotionally. Him and Joanna battled over a $20 million settlement. And in 1985, Johnny Carson had lost over $20.5 million to divorce settlements. Still, Johnny married again, but this time had learned that he wasn't built for chaos. So he kept things simple, and in 1987 he married a woman who was fiercely private, the complete opposite of his previous wives. She was also 26 years younger than him. He didn't exactly learn to. He would read or play tennis rather than talk to her. Maybe he wanted to but couldn't, because in 1991 everything changed. That incident drove Johnny deeper into himself. On June 21, 1991 in Cayucos, California, Rick Carson seemed to have driven off the cliff on a narrow road. His death shattered Johnny, who carried the guilt of not being close to his sons. For weeks, Johnny mourned, and he never got over Rick's death. Unfortunately, the losses weren't over just yet. In 1995, Christopher, Johnny's eldest son, died at 45 years old from lung cancer because he, like his dad, was also a heavy smoker. How do you process that? How do you wake up every day knowing you modeled the behavior that killed your child? What's worse? Johnny and his last son were so estranged that they rarely spoke. A lifetime of fame that brought everything except the one thing he needed. Genuine human connection. Johnny always lamented the point of everything he had when he outlived 2 of his sons. What's the point of all this? He would ask those close to him. Really, what was the point?